Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Racken. This is the Roundtable Chats podcast, where everyone has a voice and ideas are challenged. This is episode 1, taking place in my room in Boulder, Colorado, and my guest is Trent. Trent I've known for 2.5 years. We used to work together, and we've always have really dynamic conversations. So can't wait to get started. So anyways, welcome to the podcast, Trent.
Thank you for having me. It's
How are you doing?
honored to be here. I'm alive.
It's good.
That's the best start I have. Yeah. I'm well, thank you. Just happy to be here and spending a really beautiful Sunday.
Yeah.
Talking about fun, important stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess to get started, one question I always like to start with is, what are you grateful for?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you asked that, actually, because it's been a practice in my life that I've more recently tried to incorporate, where instead of getting angry about something or regretting something, thinking about, what am I grateful for? What did I get out of that experience? Because generally speaking, even when you're feeling really shitty about something, there's a reason that you feel shitty about that. It implies that there's been loss of some kind, meaning that at one point there was something to gain. So right now I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for my mother's health. She's been going through some really scary health conditions in the last 2 years. She has cardiac amyloidosis, which is pretty fatal heart condition, and almost lost her life last year. In fact, right around this time, she went to the hospital, was vomiting blood, and coded when she was in the hospital. She had a really bad ulcer from the medication she was taking. She was also going through chemo.
Right.
And coded when she was there, was out for a short period of time, and they brought her back. She coded again, was out for 2 minutes, and they brought her back. And so we didn't know if she was going to make it at the time, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
And it took months and months for her to recover. But she just visited me a couple weeks ago
Oh my god.
in Colorado. It was the first time that she had been out here since I moved here, which was 7 years ago.
That's incredible.
And she was up and about, and we cooked food together. And so I'm very grateful for that.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, just one quick question I have is, does she have any recollection of the 2 minutes she was out?
She does.
Wow.
She does. And this is interesting, actually, because she'd always been a fairly religious person. It's what initially got me into religion, but it had never been, we were never like stringent Catholics, or, we went to a Lutheran church, but we didn't give a fuck. It was just like, all right, kids, it's Christmas. Let's go to that fucking sermon at midnight or whatever. And we're like, oh, well, let's do it. And then I'd just be like a little dickhead, like, oh, there's got to be something exciting here somewhere, isn't there? You gotta shut the fuck up for like 10 minutes. Do I get to drink the wine? I was never really truly interested as a child. So we had this passive sort of form of religion, but we believed in the values, and in fact, I think a lot of Midwesterners do. I think that more than when you see certain types of culture and the incorporation of religion in that culture, it's not so much like the religion itself as it is the culture speaking its own moral values. Yeah. And so that's what we attach to anyways. This all leads to the point that she had never been like really super outwardly religious, never studied the Bible. This experience, however, she had, as many people do, a near-death experience. And she remembers that it was dark, and she was in a field. It was like a dark field, right? She said she felt the sensation of like someone wrapping their arms around you. Wow. And saying, everything's going to be okay. And she said in that moment, it was the most peace that she had ever felt.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they've done studies on this, and it's DMT gets released in the brain.
Yep.
And, what better thing to do? It's interesting that, our biology had evolved in such a way to give us comfort when we're dying. It's an interesting thing. But, yeah, she did. She remembered that. And then ever since then, she had attributed that, obviously, to what she was closest with, as close as she had come to religion at the time. There's spirituality now, so...
That relationship's really interesting because for me, it wasn't my mother, but my grandmother. She had pancreatic cancer. So unlike your mother, she was religious her whole life. But I've always been agnostic. My mom's more religious, and then my grandmother very religious. My mom's mom, But what was interesting about her, right, was like, okay, she was afraid to let him go, afraid of death. It's very slow, kind of painful death. And I was there. I would visit her every weekend in France. And she only got peace of mind when a priest came to visit her, right? So this was like south of France, Marseille. And he came to her and she said, I'm afraid that I sinned and that I'll go to hell. And he said, well, were you a good mother? She's like, yes, I was a good mother. Were you a good daughter? Yes, I was a good daughter. Were you a good friend? Yes, I was a good friend. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, you have nothing to worry about, you know? And, like, only he could give her that peace of mind, this religious figure. And so it totally changed my view of religion, right? As it's a way to accept death for a lot of people, you know, and move on. And after that conversation she had with the priest, she was like, a whole load had been lifted, you know? And then when you brought up the DMT thing, that's so interesting because I didn't see her when she died. She died on my birthday. So it's like, just great. Yeah, December 10th, 2016. Faithful. Yeah. And I knew it was going to happen.
Well, you don't know my birthday, do you?
No. Anyways, right. So it was the night before, and she was like unconscious pretty much on drugs, and she had like the biggest smile on her face when I walked in. And it's crazy for me to think that I was able to reach her somehow. I know, that's what I was saying, is the drugs. But it was when I walked in though, and so I thought it was crazy. I'm like, well, she's out like a light bulb. So it's like there's no way she can know I'm there. But I talked to her anyways, you know.
Sure.
And it was just incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible experience. She handled her misery and suffering with such strength and spirits. She was so sharp to the very end. So positive, you know. I would visit her. I mean, she'd probably have a face for me because I'm the youngest grandson or whatever, and still like the kid. But she would say, "Do you prefer American women or French women?" I'm like, "Well, obviously French women." You know? And she's like, "Oh, oui, c'est mieux. That's better. That's better." Yeah, yes, French women. Yeah. But she's one of my favorite women in life, right? Like when I think of who inspired me, it's like my mother, my aunts, French aunts, and then my French grandmother, you know. And so when she passed, it was really sad, but huge turnout to her funeral. Like super popular woman in her community. And she was positive to the end, you know. So I was just reminded a lot of her story. But I'm so happy to hear, you know, that your mother's doing
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, as am I.
It's so tough.
Yeah.
You know, all I can think of is like, imagine. I can't empathize. Imagine if that was my mom. Like, I don't know how I'd process that, but I have to say, like, you've been handling it very well.
Thank you.
From how I can tell. And I remember seeing on Facebook your picture with your mom.
Yeah.
You know, and like that was, so that's beautiful.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to also be grateful for, right, the thing that gives you the most pain. I can't help but be reminded of Stephen Colbert, right? He lost his father and two of his brothers to an airplane accident.
Right.
And his mom told him, you have to love the thing that gives you the most pain. Yeah. It's like this religious thing. And then my mom felt exactly the same way. And it's just like, if you can do that, I don't know how to do that yet, but if you can do that, like acceptance and like just being grateful for who is in your life, and your mom is still in your life, and that's such a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And the one, I guess, silver lining of that horrible thing that happened is that now it's like you're going to cherish every experience you have with her on such a deeper level. I think that's the one good thing that comes from death or pain, is that it brings, often not always, but brings people together.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
So no, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
that. I really appreciate it. I guess I can move on to
question
2. In as many or as few words as you like, what is your life story, Trent?
Okay.
Here we go.
Misery?
Oh.
I'm kidding.
Well, this is going to be a really sad episode.
I thought I'd be macabre. It's in my nature to be a bit macabre.
Yeah.
But it's all out of humor. It's a dark humor.
At some point, mention your birthday, too. Still alive, but
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I will.
Okay.
But, yeah, so I think it's only relevant in order to, I think, help the agenda of this podcast such that it paints a broader picture of the diversity that a person can be. That it's not just, this is just some normal-looking white kid in Boulder, or, you know, I now live in Westminster, Colorado. There's a history to everyone that should be known.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'll just go, but I'll do it in as brief a time as I can. And I will say what I think were the most relevant moments of my life.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I was born and raised in a town called Rockford, Illinois. Rockford is, as we've already previously fubbed. Basically the Flint, Michigan of Illinois. It's a garbage fucking place. FBI's now #1 most watched city in the country. Rockford, Illinois. Why? The drugs and it was one of those places where you grew up and it's like, oh, don't take the children to the West Side.
What kind of drugs?
I think it's mostly like heroin and meth and shit. I mean, obviously I never got into it and I had, parents that cared about me enough to not have me see that side of things. But it's like, late at night, even when I was an adult, I was like, don't go down to the West Side. If you're just down by the fucking river, this horrible river of filth that we'd go down and fish sometimes at.
Right.
It's like, you'd get fucked with for being white, honestly, for being a white guy just fishing. Like just doing your own thing.
What would they say if they saw like a white?
It would just, they'd be like passing threatening comments or, like a lot of mumbling under the breath or I'll fuck you up type shit. And that was my upbringing, honestly, like in middle school and high school, like definitely if you're different, it's a kind of culture where that difference is threatening and it's not accepted.
Yeah.
And even from your own peers and even from people that are like you, they shit and piss on you. And so, long story short, anyways, I had a really poor education there. I mean, I was a fucking moron. Honestly, I was such an idiot my whole life because it's one of the worst education systems in the country.
Yeah.
My parents got divorced when I was fairly young.
Right.
And, I didn't have the influence from both of them and, like, stay in school and learn this stuff and we care. It was like, they were dealing with their own shit.
Yeah.
You're
on your own.
I was basically on my own. And at that time, I didn't appreciate or value education in the way that probably a lot of people, certainly a lot of people out here, I know, did. I cared about more fitting in socially. So I tried and failed miserably because I'm an individual and I just didn't fit with the group.
Yeah.
And so I was focusing more on that. And then later on, in my years of high school, it sort of dawned on me that I really needed to know more about the world, the universe, where I came from, where I really came from. Because, again, I grew up with religion relatively passively. But once more, I grew very attached to that. I mean, I was once myself, I would call myself a Christian. I have a fucking tattoo on my back.
You do?
I do.
I never seen it.
Oh, I'll show you. Yeah, but again, it manifested itself more as my own ethical system. And less of, I believe that some fucking guy died and rose 3 days after and that, we shouldn't eat fucking pigs. I didn't care about any of that.
Yeah.
But it was an ethical philosophy in that when all you're ever taught, I know if I grew up in Saudi Arabia, I would have been Muslim, whatever.
Yeah, it's all relative.
But, I didn't believe the bullshit story of it was created, so I needed to know more about my reality. And so I started reading books.
Yeah.
And challenging myself. I just needed to know more. And the funny thing is, and that was back when the internet wasn't as useful and functional as it is today. It wasn't as easy, nor did it have the breadth of information and reliable sources.
Yeah, it's not easy, yeah.
But, even then it was easy, so easy, to just go to a bookstore.
Yeah.
And get a fucking book.
Right.
And I actually had the luxury at the time. So, again, coming from the Midwest, I worked at a factory. I worked for UPS for many years. And I had a stable job, and I lived with my parents my mom at the time. And so I actually got tuition reimbursement from UPS. I was able to go to community college in Illinois for free.
Nice.
So I took advantage of that, right? And I started taking courses that really interested me, like philosophy and world religions and, Eastern civilization. A lot of science courses because I really was interested in science.
What was your favorite kind of science? Which discipline?
I was always interested in, I became more interested in biology. I would say my favorite subject now is evolution. Evolution is the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And it is an explanation for everything.
Right.
Human behavior, the way that literally everything is, I look at now through an evolutionary lens.
What was the first or the most influential evolution book you read? Right?
Well, this is hilarious, and actually it was a part of this story because one of the things that finally got me to shift from what I felt to be, this like Midwestern conservative Christian, literally like Republican Christian guy, the person that I am, I tend to go to the source. Right? So where did I go? There have been hundreds of books, thousands of books that I could read now that were, written in the 2000s and updated on genetics and all this stuff. No, I go to The Origin of Species.
Right.
Charles Darwin.
Good.
And I was reading that. I want to make sure we didn't die there.
Yeah, no.
I was reading that.
Important.
Yeah. So I was reading that book, actually, on a fishing trip in Canada. And I gotten 3/4 of the way through it. And by that time, it was like without a shadow of a doubt that evolution was absolutely true. Even reading a book from 1856, which is why, again, I can't find an excuse for people nowadays. Like, I don't believe in evolution.
Yeah.
You read a book written fucking 150 years ago, and it's so utterly convincing by the evidence that's in that book.
You just have to engage it. Yeah.
And you just have to. That's all it takes is reading a book.
And I think the issue is the language, right? You know what offends me more than someone who says they don't believe in evolution and someone who says they do believe in evolution? It's not a belief. So
Exactly. It's a fact.
By saying you believe in, you can say you can believe in God, but evolution, and I think the fallacy and why Charles Darwin was so controversial, right, was that he was pretty much saying we're not these like perfectly designed beings. We're not these great things. But the thing is, you can reconcile religion with evolution. You can't, I mean, right, we don't know what happened before the Big Bang and that kind of thing. But you cannot deny that species evolved.
Exactly.
Right? And humans aren't as great as we think we are. Remember my biology teacher, which is so relevant right now because for the listeners who don't know, I dislocated my knee a week ago. The human knee is extraordinarily weak.
Yeah.
It is so poorly designed. If we are intelligently designed, God was an asshole when he designed the knees because they are so easy to dislocate. And your back.
And thanks for cancer, dickhead. You know?
Yeah, bone cancer. No, but like in any case, it's like the knees, like compared to rabbits are very agile. They don't dislocate their knees. They have great knees. We do not. That's just recently, the way it happened.
Recently bipeds. Yeah. We're talking 3 million years.
Right, exactly.
So, but yeah, you know, that actually, what's interesting is though, I was very resistant to these ideas. But it was reading that book, and I'm sitting there, it's late at night, and I'm overlooking this magnificent lake in the middle of nowhere in Canada, appreciating all of this natural beauty around me, and I had a moment of epiphany. Yeah. I was reading and I closed the book for a second and I said in my head, evolution is definitely 100% true. Yeah. It is the way that every living thing has come to be, and God is definitely 100% fake. In that moment, I came to those conclusions simultaneously because if, in fact, we were evolved, it cannot make any sense to me that religion is anything other than its own evolution. You know, it was a design that was created by the human mind. And the human mind then created by evolution by mere coincidence. Right. Let's be frank. You know, again, we could be still hanging out with shit-headed dinosaurs who are just fucking eating each other forever. That's it. There could be life, and it would never know the universe that it lives in. Yeah. Yes, true. And ever. I think that's what people discount too much is the role randomness and chance plays, right? That the idea, and that actually goes back to what I'm grateful for most of being alive. It's like this idea that the probability of the universe existing the way it does, then the Earth existing the way it does, then life existing as it does, and then our species existing the way they did, and not being consumed by some other predator, and how we survived. And then you look at all your ancestors, and if they didn't get it on at the precise moment they did, and so on and so on and so on, for all purposes, just mathematically, the probability of you existing should be 0. It should be impossible, and yet there's like more than 7 billion of us, and that's like, it blows my mind. But there's so many ways it could have been different, you know. And what makes evolution so exciting is that instead of saying something like, oh, well, how did language come to be? Well, God just created it. Or you could say, no, it evolved, and it's probably one of the most insane evolutionary things if you think about it, human language, because that's what that, and I think Yuval Harari said in *Sapiens*, is our ability to have shared fictions, whether it's money, capitalism, communism, politics, everything, these shared truths, you know? It's insane. Also, perfect documentation of evolution, the human brain, right? There's the reptile part of the brain, your thirst, your hunger, sex. Then there's your mammalian part of the brain, which is social interactions. And then there's the human part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, where we're able to simulate the future, even if it hasn't happened yet. Right. And that's what, and so just, if you study the brain, you can see the evolution. Right. It's really cool, you know? So I'm glad you had that epiphany. I mean, obviously that was like a big pivotal moment. It was, I'd say, the thing that changed my life. I would probably, honestly, should we do something about that noise? What is that?
Yeah, we could take a quick break. And
Yeah. Maybe
investigate that. Yeah.
I'll just pause it.
Pause it there. We could tell them.
All right. So, yeah, it was a
Pivotal moment.
That was a pivotal moment in my life. Honestly, it changed fundamentally the person that I was. It rewired my neuro networking into looking at the world through a critical lens, something that I never had the gift of. And when you do that, there's no going back.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny that some of the religious people I know now, and they're like, well, you could. And it's like, you know, I'm sorry.
This is how I think now.
Yeah, like, I look at things skeptically. And everything now, like, if there is a scientific explanation for it, you know, that is what I will seek. Yeah. And if it doesn't have one yet, I don't assume default that it's fucking supernatural.
Yeah.
You know, as phrase I developed later in life, just because it's inexplicable doesn't mean that it's supernatural.
Right.
You know, we default to saying, well, just because we don't know how it is, must have been the only other alternative. It's a false dichotomy, is that it must be some supernatural force. But
well, it's like Neil deGrasse Tyson. I love how he was like, once you say I don't know, that's the end of the conversation. Is I don't know.
Exactly.
You don't say I don't know, therefore it's an alien.
Exactly.
It's like, no, you just don't know. There's nothing wrong with that.
And that's
it's a beautiful thing to not know.
It is, and so I grew that into my life as well. But that was the moment where I would say my life path started. And I didn't know in which way it would take shape, but I knew that it was going to be in some way through logic, philosophy, or science, and that it was important to me now that, in a way, this be exposed. So my earliest idea was that I thought that I wanted to be on radio. It's interesting now, so many years later, I'm here on a podcast. Yeah. Because I thought I wanted to do radio as a little old-fashioned. And I started taking some journalism courses and stuff like that. Eventually led to film. And I knew I didn't want to be in the horseshit town that I was living in anymore. I hated that place. And I hated my job. Being in a factory is, when you are a thinking person, it is anathema to every fiber of your being. Because it is just creativity killing, mind-numbing, arbitrary work.
It can't get more dehumanizing than that.
It is. You're an automaton.
You're an object. You're a robot.
So eventually I was like, I want to move out of here. My dad took me out on a road trip. Nice. Colorado, he travels a lot. And he was like, let's take 5 extra days when I'm done working here. Nice. And we're going to travel the state. Word. And I came over that hill going into Boulder and I said, this is where I want to be.
This is it, yeah.
You know, and so I looked into school journalism here.
How old were you when you
came? I was late. I was a late bloomer. I mean, I was 23 when I came out here.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't go to college because I hated school so much. I didn't go to college right away. In fact, I was still on my old Midwestern mindset. The first post-high school education that I had was building construction. Right. I thought I wanted to do remodeling. So I literally have a certificate in building construction technology.
Nice. How many people can
I don't fucking know. You know, again, I just thought, and then I realized, I don't want to be banging a hammer for the rest of my life. I want to do something creative, but I never knew that I had creativity in me like that. You know, as a musician, I was developing into a musician then, but I also didn't know that I was creative.
And what about photography? Because that's a pretty...
Right, so again, that came way later in life for me. In fact, I didn't really touch a camera, seriously, or research it until I came out to see you. Wow. 23.
That's incredible, yeah.
And I took some photography courses. And then I was introduced to this student group there. It's called the Secular Students and Skeptics Society. And the whole function being like, let's have these conversations about religion. I mean, it was a safe haven for people that were irreligious or displaced from religious homes. We had Mormons and people from stern Catholic families, whole 9 yards. But the main point of it was think critically, think skeptically. In every aspect of your life, have those 2 fundamental concepts by your side. And, challenge other people, too. So, we did fun events. And eventually, anyways, I became the president of that group for a while, about a year. And then slowly but surely, made my way into the film career. Because I knew that I didn't want to do radio anymore, but I was passionate about storytelling. And so I started working with a camera and developing my skills. And then eventually got a scholarship. I went to China, did a documentary there. That's part of the reason I'm here again, because I feel like the ideas of what you want to do here and what I want to do with my work, they merge very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and now I'm director of photography for the company that I work for that we
Yeah.
used to work for.
Absolutely.
And come full circle, I guess. That's my life story in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful life story. And the one thing I wanted to add or ask you about is one thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is a lot of people, when they want to improve, they focus on themselves.
Right.
But really, the most effective way to change who you are is to change who you surround yourself with.
Right.
Who your people are. So that I feel like that just must have been a huge role. Who you were with back in Illinois versus in Boulder. I mean, I can't think of such a different set of people.
Yeah.
Right.
It was necessary for me, honestly, to get out of there. And it was painful. I mean, I had very, very close relationships with my friends there. They're family to me, you know. And of course, I had my family there. It was hard to move, but I knew that I needed to do it, and I knew that that was part of the reason why. There isn't a culture of intellectualism there. They, again, like even as far back when I was a child, they just don't care.
Yeah.
And I cared very deeply. In fact, I'd say the thing that I care most about is what I would call the truth, capital T truth, which is ultimately knowledge.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's my life story.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
No, that was beautiful.
Thanks.
Okay, question number 3. What excites or fascinates you, Trent? I know there's many things.
Yeah.
That's something we have in common. Is like, just quickly, I wanted to tell the audience, I envision you as like a Jack Russell Terrier in human form, like, because you'll like, when we really get into conversation a little less structured than this, we'll just like jump from topic to topic to topic to topic, and like you have such a great like this attention span, you know, going around everywhere. Like I just love that. So maybe I should edit the question to what excites or fascinates you right now. Like what's it?
Yeah.
Recently?
And it's a great question. You're right. And I actually just alluded to some of that in my previous statement, which is I love science.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, that's great.
And I've always loved evolution. It intrigues me so deeply.
Oh yeah.
In fact, so an example of this was just I was like sitting in bed the other night and I was like thinking about spiders.
As you do.
Just because you do. And I don't know why. Spiders really intrigue me. They always have. I've always sort of been their little silent advocate because I won't kill them when they're in my home. I respect life immensely.
Yeah.
And especially life that we... Like, I find it so funny. It's always like, save the fucking whale, save all this cute little shit. Like, fuck the snakes! Fuck the spiders!
Yeah, nobody...
They're a part of the
them.
ecosystem, too.
It activates their amygdala. They're afraid of them, you know.
Well, yeah, and I understand why. Emotionally why. Logically, though.
Yeah.
If you respect life, you respect all life.
True.
You know.
True. I've always been afraid of spiders. I don't necessarily kill them.
Yeah.
But it's more like... 2 things. One is just the legs, right? 8 legs. The other is they're never relaxing, right? They're like always.
Oh,
ready.
totally
They're always
looming.
Like poised.
They are looming.
They're never
creatures.
chilling.
Right.
And then of course there's the female Black Widow that kills the male after they reproduce.
Oh yeah, that's
Not
gruesome.
A fan of that either.
It's gruesome.
If you want like the ultimate alpha female, it's the Black
Oh,
Widow.
totally.
You know.
Totally.
Badass.
Yeah.
So you're thinking about spiders.
So I'm thinking about spiders because they intrigue me, and I just decided I'm gonna research spider evolution.
You should.
And
yeah.
I did. I looked online and I was like, I found resources. I found a video,
Nice.
10 minutes long. I was like, oh wow, there's like 10 different kinds of arachne,
Arachne,
right?
yeah.
Spiders are among them, ticks and other shit. And so
Interesting.
I don't know. It's that kind of stuff that tickles me, and stuff like this, human conversation, human interaction, philosophy has always deeply interested me.
Yeah.
I just went to a Stoic meeting.
I love Stoics.
They're really
love the
cool.
Stoics,
I knew
yeah.
very little about them.
Yeah,
And I had a guy who was
learned
getting
about it too. I'm reading this book called The Daily Stoic, and it's just like a page.
Literally, my girlfriend, her boyfriend was, or her boyfriend, her brother was the one who got us to go to the meeting. He's the one that was been really into Stoicism. He bought her that book.
It's a great book
Yeah.
because you read it and it's just like, I just love that. One of their lines is like my guiding philosophy in life now, which is what is in my control,
Yep.
what is not in my control.
Exactly.
Let's just do what's in my control.
Yeah.
And when you let go, that's the hardest thing, right? Of the things that are out of your control.
Right.
It's kind of hard to be anxious or worried, you know?
Exactly.
And of course, those two things are very complicated, and some
Right.
people are just wired to be very stressed and very worried.
Right.
But the idea of letting go what's not in your control is so empowering.
Right.
You know? So I'm glad you mentioned Stoic philosophy, because that's something I've been getting into recently. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
It is.
Honestly. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the meeting, and again, honestly, it all goes back to knowledge. I love
Yes,
learning.
Me too.
And I love engaging in fun, cool, interesting experiences.
Yeah. The other thing I just was thinking about with the spiders, okay? There's
Back to
I
spiders.
think it's what unites humanity. Like, okay, Harry Potter.
Yes.
Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
It by Stephen King. There's another one. But in any case, right, it's this kind of ancient biblical archetype. I don't know if it comes from the Bible, but it's in fantasy everywhere. The spider's the evil whatever.
Right.
It is my favorite example because, right, everyone remembers the clown, right? And Stephen King made everyone afraid of clowns forever. But what's interesting about that book, spoiler alert, is that its final form is a spider.
Right.
And I'm like, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's the epitome of fear.
Yeah.
Right.
It
the
really
most
is.
visceral
and like
sensation
a huge
of
spider,
fear.
essentially.
Yeah.
Especially, right? Because those don't exist. I don't think. I hope.
Right.
But ones that are like
exactly.
monsters, like. Definitely Lord of the Rings, right? It's
right.
Some of my favorite movies, but when I was like 2003, I was like, I don't know, a little kid, like 7. So seeing the spider take them out, Sheila or whatever his name.
Yeah.
I'm like, get me out of here.
Yep.
And Harry Potter too, equally young. Chamber of Secrets,
totally.
Same thing. It's like. That one was a little more friendly because it talked.
Exactly, right. But still like a kind of a dick.
I didn't care about the big one. I cared about the small one.
Yeah,
the army of the spiders surrounding them. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm out of Hogwarts. I'm done. Like, screw that. Screw your school. You're trying to kill me every year. No. It's like the most dangerous school of all time.
Right.
For the record.
Whose parents, honestly?
Why are there's no one, like, protecting the
right.
students? You can just go into the Forbidden Forest.
Security.
Where there's,
you know what they need? They need armed...
They need AR-15.
They need AR-15 armed
Yeah.
professors at Hogwarts.
That's what Harry Potter was
That's what
missing.
I'm going to petition.
That's what it was missing.
Yeah.
And I remember Jordan Peterson, he talked about Harry Potter. Part of the reason why it's one of the best-selling books of all time, it totally takes these ancient biblical archetypes, right? I mean, Harry Potter is literally Jesus in the 7th book. He resurrects himself, you know, and it has these themes, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. That's what interests you. No, and I'm the same way, you know, just knowledge. It's just, it's insane that everyone has a computer in their pocket, essentially, in America. And it's like, you could literally look up anything. And what do? We look at Snapchat, we look at Instagram. And, you know, you get the dopamine. I get it's human connection a little bit, and it can be fun. But if that's all you're doing on your phone, it's like... I feel like you're just not taking advantage of life as much as you can. And like, I'm biased because like I'm like probably like you. I'm an information junkie. I just like to read a lot of books simultaneously and just learn. But even if you're not, right, with podcasts, even not to be too meta, but that's been a brilliant way to get information to the masses where. You don't have to stop and read a book. You can be doing your errands or whatever, listening. That's what I do now.
Yeah, me too.
It's great, you know. So, anyways.
Yeah.
Next question. What problem gets you angry or upset? Very loaded.
Oh, God. I mean, these days, what doesn't?
What doesn't, yeah.
I mean, for you know,
people... I think anyone would say, too, for different reasons.
Oh, for sure.
We're all upset. We're all on outrage nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much, though, to be outraged about.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredible.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, you know, for people that don't know me, it's funny because at one point, you know, again, I was a very passionate advocate for literally conservatism and Christianity, right? Now I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. Right. Regardless,
Boulder.
I've never. Yeah, really. My dad was always worried. He was like, "Are you going to become? You're not going to come on those fucking libs, are you?
Those libtards, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah.
Obama's a cunt." No kidding.
Yeah.
But like,
anyways,
you know, I wouldn't say that I made the full conversion because I don't label myself as a liberal. I call myself an atheist because. It's convenient.
Best identity for yourself.
Yeah, and it means that, again, and this is something I want to just, for anyone that would be listening to this, who would hear the term atheist and have a natural, visceral reaction, a natural revulsion to that notion, even if, you know, you're not particularly religious. It simply means without God. Doesn't mean anything other than that.
Yeah.
It's a lack of... So, as I think... Neil deGrasse Tyson put it, and probably many people before him, he would say it in such a way, I am atheist to, you know, however many thousands and thousands of gods they are, and one more. Right? You believe in just the one.
Yeah, I think Ricky Gervais, too. Yeah,
Ricky Gervais.
Like yeah.
And so, yeah, just to clear up the notion of... Maybe I'll...
Maybe we should pause it. Wait. God damn, I don't think... What were we saying?
Oh, yes. So there was this diatribe about atheism that was
Oh yeah. So speaking, you were talking about atheists, talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson, Ricky Gervais.
Yes.
What it means, what it doesn't.
Yes. So it just means, I'm an A-fairist. Also, I'm an A-Bigfootist. I'm also an atheist. I don't believe in a God because there isn't sufficient evidence for him. Best way I put it, I had to put it to my mother, because it's interesting. She's like, obviously deeply believes now.
Yeah.
So I put it to her, any God, that natural conception of a God that we have anyways, omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, right? Our classic monotheistic God. If that God exists, if he's real, and he were any kind of God that I would want to worship, that he was worth the merit of worship, I wouldn't believe in him. He wouldn't have made me the way that he made me. Right? Okay? If he has all three of those qualities, all powerful, all knowing, all benevolent, and he made me a skeptic.
I think it's because he doesn't like you.
I once believed that. I thought he was... You know what? And if I were him, I wouldn't either.
No.
But anyways, I didn't mean to go off on that.
No, that's funny. I just wanted to add off that, I'm agnostic, and for me, why I make that distinction, and this probably would piss off both theists and atheists, but pretty much is right. You can't prove or disprove the existence of God. Mm-hmm. But I'm still on this, if it's a spectrum, theism versus atheism instead of like a binary, I'll still be more on the atheism and the spectrum, even though I'm still agnostic in identity. You can't disprove or prove the existence of God, but that's like kind of like the weakest argument to say you can't disprove God, because you can't disprove much of anything.
Right.
I can't disprove that somewhere in the unobservable part of the universe is the that.
Yes.
Or anything for that matter.
Exactly.
I can't disprove that if I close my eyes, the world ceases to exist. Like there's
exactly.
outside this room.
Exactly.
Not to get too philosophical. It's just there's a lot of things we can't disprove.
Right.
Which means that's why it's reason and evidence and those two at least are so important. Like it's just like, because if you don't believe in evidence. Like, to me, two of the greatest inventions of humankind, one was freedom of speech, and the other is the scientific method. Like, I don't think many people really understand how the scientific method works and how it differs from, or scientific theories, for example, versus regular theories.
Yeah.
A theory is just saying Bigfoot is real.
Right.
A scientific theory would be saying we tried in every capacity to disprove the existence of Bigfoot and failed.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to keep going.
Yeah,
we're going to keep trying forever.
Gravity is a theory.
Even if we meet Bigfoot, we'll still be trying to find It's probably a guy in a suit. Or an alien, just not Bigfoot, you know? And by the way, like, isn't that a very vague term, Bigfoot? Like, what if it's just another creature with big feet?
I've wondered this. You know, what are those, like, there's those rabbits that live in Australia and have gigantic feet? Yeah. That's fucking Bigfoot.
That's Bigfoot.
It has a literal Bigfoot.
I know.
I've always thought about that. I have a weird fantasy that, in fact, it's a sci-fi I want to make someday, that we actually, because there were many other hominids that walked and talked, and, Homo sapiens.
Yeah, we ate them.
Yeah, we fucked them. We literally fucked other hominids that weren't humans. They're Neanderthals. Because, of course, we'd fuck them. Yeah. But, I've always had this weird idea and hope, in fact, that there have been other anthropomorphoid type bipedal intelligent agents.
Yeah.
It'd be fucking cool.
I kind of feel bad for the Neanderthals.
I feel super bad for
I don't know if you watched Westworld at all.
Uh-uh.
Oh, it's my new favorite show, but Anthony Hopkins is brilliant. He's like the creator of the Westworld, and he creates these machines, and it kind of plays with the Turing test, right? Machines that are so like humans that we think they're human.
Right.
And like, what does it mean to be human? Really good show.
Yeah.
On HBO. But anyways, he says, he's like, Bernard, you know what we Homo sapiens did to the Neanderthals? We ate them. And it's like, that's such a good line. And it's pretty much saying the machines are going to do the same.
I see.
Right? Just the next stage of evolution.
Right.
I think you'd really love the show. But I was just reminded of that because it's like, on the subject quickly of artificial intelligence, right? A lot of people are afraid that they're going to take us over and just do horrific things to us because that's what always imperialist countries did to
Right.
natives, right?
Right.
We always treat each other pretty badly, but that's just like human nature. I think we're just really bad. Like,
Yeah,
Homo sapiens,
we're just
you
shit.
know?
Yeah.
Like all animals are animals, but Homo sapiens are really good at doing cruel things.
Well, we
right?
evolved from alpha male primate societies.
Yeah.
And that's really, again, when you look at things through an evolutionary lens, you stop getting so angry. So this is what's ironic about,
Yeah.
I guess what goes full circle,
Great
right?
line, yeah.
What pisses me off or what
Yes.
really rubs me the wrong way?
Yes.
A lot of shit, most everything, right? But instead of like, lashing out,
Right, which isn't gonna do anything.
doesn't change anything, and
Yeah.
it just perpetuates this very thing that you're trying to undermine through
Right.
this podcast, which is conversation with
Yes,
people.
that's what we need. Yeah.
I just think, okay, not, oh, this is so bad because it's this way. Well, why is it this way? Right? And then I'll turn my question on myself then and say, instead of saying all of the multitude of things that I could be angry about, I'm most angry about the fact that people don't do that. They don't ask why. They just respond to whatever is going on in their environment. They don't take 10 minutes to sit back and think, why do I think this? Why do I believe this? Because honestly, everyone is conditioned into thinking and believing the shit that they do. Yeah. If you're not introduced to an idea, you don't just fucking come up with the idea that some guy was nailed to a cross and came out of a hole 3 days later. That's nuts. That's crazy shit. You don't think to bomb people in your fucking school,
Yeah, you're indoctrinated, yeah.
You look at the media. Now, here's an interesting thing
Right.
I studied was like Kurt Cobain, after he shot himself, or, allegedly shot himself in the head with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Suicide by shotgun went up enormously after that. We're copycat creatures.
Yeah.
Right? And so instead of
That's
being
really
like,
scary.
oh,
Yeah.
all this school shooting arguments and stuff that we have, and yes, I have my own beliefs on that, but that's all they are.
Yes.
And if I'm not informed, I say that.
And obviously there's no scientific answer to it, or else
Exactly. But that's
It's
where we go,
morality,
right?
Yeah.
Try to research it. But the fact of the matter is that people will bark and bark and bark about their beliefs, not really think about where they come from.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's my
Question.
biggest, right now, thing that upsets me. People lacking the ability of critical thought
Yeah.
and introspection.
No, I agree 100%. I don't like when people get overly emotional.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing to talk about because, especially who I'm saying that to, but what I mean by that is it's not that emotions are wrong. I mean, that's to be human. My favorite philosopher, David Hume, said passion, emotions beat reason any day of the week,
Yeah.
right? I study behavior economics. I study human emotions and irrationality. And I've just noticed over time, all the people I've studied, the people I admire the most, men and women, are those who control their emotions. I'm at the risk of sounding unscientific or talking out my ass. I do think there's a strong correlation between intelligence and being unemotional.
Right.
I just on the extremes. I just see it.
Well,
all the
I would
time.
say that it is a form of intelligence.
Oh, one form. Yeah, there's many forms.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good correction.
Yeah.
Right. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with emotion. We need passion, right?
Right.
I mean, God, think about how
Civil rights
movies and
movement.
art and music
Yeah,
and
yeah.
civil rights and all this would be like without emotion. It's everything. And I think men totally restrict emotion so much that we kill ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
We have astronomically high suicide rates in young men that nobody's talking about. We all know the cause of it, right? I think Bill Burr, the comedian, he summed it up so best. It's like an ultra macho guy sees a puppy or something, he's like, gotta resist, don't be a faggot, and it's ridiculous. And
true.
to say that, and he knows it's being ridiculous, and obviously harming himself. Right? The world would be such a better place if men were more in tune with their emotions. I've always been very sensitive, and I've always seen that as a weakness. I'll cry easily, right?
Yeah.
In movies or whatever, But now I see that as a great strength. It's purely empathy.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think men around the world, especially in America, it's not as bad as like in the Middle East, for instance, where crying is seen as pure weakness, right? And then this can go even deeper with mental illness. I know in the African American community, bipolar is a big issue because a lot are in denial that they have mental illness because that's just weakness. A man doesn't get depressed, right? And that's such fucking bullshit. And it's so anti-scientific even. It's like you're lying to yourself. You can't. Again, Stephen Fry sums up depression so well. It's like weather, or bipolar. It's like weather where, okay, it's raining outside. You cannot deny that it's raining outside. You can't just snap out of it. It is raining. At the same time, you don't need to be devastated by it either. It's raining, therefore my life is over.
Right.
Right? So there is a balance to be struck. But to deny that it's raining when you are wet, you're not doing yourself any favors, right? And the key is to build your resilience, so you effectively, in this metaphor, have an umbrella, or something. But, this idea that I'm not depressed, you can't think out of depression,
Right.
You can work towards it, you can lessen it, you can work on it, but you can't just think out of it,
right.
So, yeah, that was just something
to
clarify.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be my, I think, biggest gripe.
Yeah,
People not looking introspectively and, not, again, being critically thinking and skeptical.
Yeah, and the thing I would add to that, I think supplements that well, is listening.
Absolutely.
Really listening deeply to each other.
Genuinely.
Instead of planning your next argument, your next point against that person to destroy them, to win.
Right.
By the way, what the fuck does it mean to win in life?
Exactly.
What do you win at the end of life? Death?
Yeah, each and every one of us.
Okay, life is a race. What happens when you get to the finish line?
Exactly.
Like, what is winning?
Yeah.
Obviously, okay, you want shelter, you want food, you hopefully have a good sex life, you have a partner of some sort, family, friends, okay. But this idea of winning, it's very American.
It is. It is very American.
Like, I'm so blessed to be half French, because at least in the France, like, they don't have that concept of winning.
That winning is the most important thing at any cost.
No, they're, like, really depressed and pessimistic.
Right?
Cynically. I love it. Like, this French comedian is like, I'm
Nihilism.
so glad the French don't write fortune cookies, because it would say things like, don't reach for the stars, you'll never make it. Or, like, life is hard, and then you die.
Perfect.
This was, like, Gad Emily. You recently had, like, a bit on Netflix, but it's just, like, it's so true, I feel like in America, everything has to be okay, right? It's like, oh, how's your life? It's fine. It's good. Everything's fine. It's like, just say it's not.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
It's
Everyone has to say it's fine. France, it's the opposite. You ask a French person how they're doing, they say, oh, it's shit.
Yeah.
And, like, I'll always prefer, like, the honesty, just the being blunt, because then you can work with that.
Yeah.
If you tell me you're okay and I don't pick up that you're not,
well,
I'm lying, that's not good.
Well, that's why I'm hoping that what you're doing here is a gateway to that, to authentic conversations, and to open up the opportunity to create a culture of honesty between people, something that Americans, like you said, don't have.
Yeah, I want to really, on the subject of the podcast, I really want to blow up stigmas, right? So for me, mental illness is a big one. I hope to have people of all the different mental illnesses on my show at some point. Race relations, transgender issues, gender issues, everything. I just want out there, right? And as open and friendly and loving of a space as possible, because we're all human, we're all going through shit. Life is fucking hard. And, if you can't tell your truth, if you can't be who you are, good luck with life. I mean, that's really hard, so I hope I can do that in some small place. Anyways, next question. This is a good segue. Who needs the most help, do you think, in this world?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question.
It's a tough one,
Yeah, it's always subjective, too. Yes. Like, there's that whole, everyone has this sort of white savior complex, right? Who needs the most help? Oh, the poor children in Africa or something, right?
It's like, oh, yeah, what about Bangladesh?
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's suffering
Syria?
everywhere.
Yes.
Right. But I guess I go back to my previous statement, and I'd like to reiterate the fact that those who need the most help are those whom live in an environment that does not encourage and embrace, in every aspect of someone's life, critical thinking. It is the only way we'll get out of this mess. It is the only way that we'll end up giving a fuck about each other. Is if, from birth, you are taught to critically think. Because otherwise, it's going to be suffering, we're going to blow up the planet, and everyone's going to fucking die. And that's it. Because if you don't question, say, even such a thing as capitalism or communism or whatever it is, whatever dictatorial fucking regime.
Liberalism, conservatism, anything.
Anything that you're a subject of, and all you're doing, again, is fighting each other. Sorry, we'll never get anywhere.
Yeah.
So
critical thinking is the best bullshit detector. It's the best way to get rid of the evil people in the world.
Exactly.
Right? We need more questioning. I agree. I think back now to Steven Pinker, the Harvard psychologist, when he said it's like my favorite thing. He says, if you ever come across a society or a group of people where everyone is in agreement about everything, run the fuck away.
Exactly.
That is not good.
Yeah.
We need disagreement, right? And it's a good thing to disagree. There are no universal truths, I would even say. I mean, obviously we should strive to be good people, be good to your neighbor, right? There's these qualities, but a lot of ideas are completely up to debate, and at least philosophically. And my favorite example, two of my favorite thinkers are Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
They disagree very strongly with each other, but I hold both of them in very high regard.
Right.
You know, and so
because at least they're critically thinking.
They are.
Honestly,
I agree. Yeah.
Honestly.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're civil.
Right.
That's the other
respectful.
component, right? We're not having civil when we do have conversations nowadays, at least in the United States, it's not civil.
Right.
The first thing I did as a liberal after Trump got elected was talk to my friends who voted for Trump.
Right.
That's the first thing I did. I wanted to know their perspective. They could not really give me great reasons in favor of Trump. They could give me many reasons against Hillary, right? So that was illuminating to me. It made me question my own beliefs a little bit.
Sure.
But to silence those who we disagree with,
right,
no matter how outrageous their views, at the very least, that's only going to provide temporary relief. I mean, best case scenario. But it's not going to solve anything. Like, not talking to Nazis and talking about Nazis and pretending they don't exist, they're still there. And in fact, it gives them a lot of power if you just kind of ignore them.
It's like, I always felt that way about language, too. If you ban a word, it gives that word power.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm in agreement there. But again, all of this crumbles under, if from, again, a very early age, you are taught to think critically in every aspect of your life.
And not be afraid of ideas,
yeah.
right? So...
And to not hate other ideas just because they're not yours.
Yeah, at least, I think it was Aristotle, like, to be able to entertain a thought without agreeing with it. You just think through it a little
genuinely
bit.
entertain it. Yeah.
And it's good to change your mind sometimes.
It is.
Things, right? It's very
Again,
healthy.
Like, I'm a living example.
Yeah.
In fact, to me, the idea inherently that, you know, like we watch in our modern day media, something about our heroes. Right? The hero has a certain quality about them, and it is a steadfast belief in what they're doing. An unbreakable, almost like deontological, firm belief in what they're doing, right? They're zealots. And always a person that is sort of wishy-washy or on the fence about something is disparaged in our culture. And that is so disgraceful to me, because I think it is one of the most honorable things that a person can do, is to look themselves dead in the fucking eye and change their mind. It takes courage.
It takes a lot of courage
to change your fucking mind, especially when, again, you're threatened, like many people are, like I felt like I was, with eternal damnation. Literally. Yeah. When you stare yourself in the eye and you say, I can't believe this anymore, and that you awaken, you have a first sentient moment of saying and realizing your impermanence, like, holy shit, I'm not going to be here forever. There isn't a forever. And you face that and you say, despite me not wanting to even believe that, I want to believe, right? But having the courage to change your mind, I think that that's a really seriously undervalued characteristic in our society. So, yeah, you know, anyways, I think all goes back to the ability to critically think, because then you can question your way through this without those moments of self-deprecation, and, you know, you don't treat yourself or others poorly.
Right.
Just because they have a different view.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's essential, and playing off that, right, the idea of saying, I was wrong.
Exactly.
And taking accountability.
Yeah.
Right, I think is one of the most valuable skills one can possess.
Absolutely.
And the easiest thing is to point fingers, blame other people. Jocko, I think he has a great podcast. He's a Marine leader, and he was just saying, like, there was just a mission that went horribly wrong. The easiest thing he could do was blame everyone in his platoon, in the Navy SEALs, but he took full accountability.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So I think that's super important. Moving on. What do you regret most in life?
Yeah,
That's the hardest of questions.
It really is. And, I guess in the state of being grateful, right, I'd like to not say that I have regrets, but I can't say that honestly. I would say that it's a more of a philosophical thing than like an event that happened or some actual thing that I did. And I would say that it would be not being more aware of my actions towards others in a larger sense, and being far too emotionally involved with myself and not caring enough about how my actions affect other people. Because, I've heard a lot of people, and I can think of many instances in which I have, right? But no one of them could stand out much greater than any other.
Right.
But the greatest part is that I didn't have the awareness that I wished that I did in order to prevent that harm. Self-awareness. I regret not being in touch with myself more earlier on in life. And of course, I still don't want to, beat the shit out of myself for that, because we all travel our own path. There was no one there to help me. I've never had a mentor. Yeah. I've done it
self-made,
all on my own. I wish so often. I, realized when I was watching, certain shows or movies or whatever, I would watch people having a mentor, and the character that I always liked most was the mentor.
Yeah, same.
And I was like, why? I thought more and more about that. I was like, holy fuck, I've never had that. That's why I love those characters so much. I envy that deeply.
Yeah.
But, so I don't want to sit there and blame myself for oh, you fucking should have been better.
Yeah.
There's no gain in that either.
No.
It's just now it's being okay, well, I am aware, or I'm trying to be more aware, and every day actively thinking, okay, well, how do I make sure that I don't know, do everything that I can in order to make people, maybe not even make them happy, but to avoid their suffering.
To do no harm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do no harm. My own Hippocratic oath.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful thing. When did you cultivate that self-awareness, though? How did that shift happen?
Honestly say, yeah, no, it's a great question, and I appreciate it. I would say, honestly, only very recently, within the last year of my life, I had some really self-destructive habits for a while, and got into a bad way in some really bad relationships, but I'm in a really nice relationship now, and, it's good thinking about yourself inside of the context of that, too. Inside of the context of your own relationship, because now she's going through a lot of the shit that I went through before, right? So you get this outside perspective, and you're like, well, fuck, that's the shit that I was doing back then. How do I become better? How do I self-correct? And honestly, it's just becoming more in tune with myself and more honest with yourself. Again, for many years I felt like I didn't know who the hell I was. And then when I did, I was terrified of that person because I thought I might be shit. And then I eventually came to the fact, you know what? I just need to accept myself and know what I'm good at, know my strengths, know my weaknesses, and try to the best that I can, improve my weaknesses and harvest my strengths. And so, yeah, it was a bit of just a shift in a mentality, and like you said, involving people more in your life that you want to have involved. Yeah. Surrounding yourself with the right type of people.
It changes your neurochemistry.
It does.
It's really blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I'm blessed. I've always had, I guess, good people in my life just by being born in Boulder, and just the friend groups. They're always positive people. They're they're not drug addicts. They're not assholes. They're not bad people. I was good at selecting and discerning. And I got along with most people, too, which was good.
Right.
I was kind of this weird person where it's I like school a lot, nerdy, but I wasn't quite nerd. I mean, I would do sports too, and so in high school I kind of tiptoed around a lot of different cliques, but I was still always seen as different, right? I've always been weird, but I could own that, right? When I try to teach, I have an next door neighbor who's getting bullied, right, for being Asian. It sucks, right? At 8th grade, he's a genius, right? He's taking calculus when he's 14, right? That kind of mind is just incredible, and I want that to be cultivated. I want to help him, but what I told his mom when she told me he was getting bullied, I'm like, there's not a lot you can do about the bullies in middle school or high school. And it's he wasn't being physically assaulted or anything like that. It wasn't severe bullying. It was more name calling and racism, really.
Right.
Which is awful. But what I told her is when people would make fun of me for being French, I would always laugh at that because it's like there's only two type of French jokes. It's surrender and smelling bad. And I'm like, come up with better jokes. That's what I'm telling them. Be more original, you know? And they'd be like, oh, we saved your ass. We saved the French's ass in World War II. I'm like, you wouldn't be a country if it wasn't for the French. We saved you in the American, you know, Revolution. So I don't want to hear it, you know? But if I was like kind of quick on my feet, and that was my way of commenting it, but a lot of people aren't. And it's sad when I see what's happening to the kid across the street because like he's just a very quiet, nice kid, and unfortunately assholes will take advantage of that, right? And it's like, what do you do about that? I don't know, you know, but kind of got sidetracked there. Forget what I was gonna say, but when you're saying that self-awareness piece though, right, to me that kind of sounds like mindfulness a little bit. Yeah. And that's something I've been working on a lot recently since like 2014. I try to meditate every morning, and but like it helps me see the silver lining in bad things. Like, so when I dislocated my knee, I became much more mindful of my physical body, right? Exactly. It's like if I need to go to my bathroom, now my whole being becomes going to the bathroom. Yeah. Well, you learn to appreciate again the things that you did have. Exactly. But it's like I'm very in the present. Yeah. So in that sense, it is a gift, this injury. So I just love that you have this self-awareness, because that's like one of the most important things to cultivate. I wish they would help you learn that in school. Totally agree. Like, all the problems I see in the world always goes back to education. So like for me, I would love to teach meditation or yoga in elementary school, like really young. Definitely. Middle school, teach ethics and having discourse and debates, and then high school teaching personal finance, so you don't get that's the most insane one to me, you know. But mandatory personal finance. Teach them how to invest too, you know. I can help with that. Like, it's so irritating to me that those are like three really big important skills that are lacking. You can learn the critical thinking through the ethics and the discourse. The morality classes is a great way to practice critical thinking, because there are no right answers, right? The whole trolley problem, everyone has a different interpretation. It's beautiful, you know. And then you can get into harder things like abortion and stuff. Right. And anyways, no, I'm so glad you were able to cultivate. Well, it's an ever-evolving pursuit as well. Yes. You know, it's like sometimes... No, I got it. I'm done. I think that to myself, you know, and then I get in traffic. I'm like, I'm losing my fucking mind. Kill you all, you know. And I hate humanity. I love humanity. I hate humanity. But, you know, like, with that in mind, it's... Yeah, I'm happy because you know, I feel more in touch with myself. And because of that, again, I can extend my considerations outward more readily and easier than I was before. So that's why I'm grateful for that too. But thanks. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. What is one book you most want our listeners to read? Yeah. Any book you've read, book you're reading recently? Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot that I have read that has changed my life personally, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to change anyone else's life too. Right. I do feel like it is of the utmost importance that people understand evolution. Yeah. So a big part of me wants to encourage that. I don't care which book it is. There was a guy, his name's Ernst Mayr, a renowned evolutionary biologist. He lived past 100 years old. Wow. And he, you know, after I read Charles Darwin and you know, a couple other evolution and biology books, cosmology, stuff like that, I read his book, which is, you know, much more recent, obviously, and it you know, covers genetics, and it covers all these new discoveries that we have in the way of evolution, microbes, and the whole nine yards. And it's an extraordinary book. And I'd say, you know, any book of that caliber, especially for those who don't believe in evolution, because again, it's not, I don't want anyone, or I don't want you to be converted from your religion. I merely want you to understand why things happen that right now you may attribute to something that is really unhealthy for you, and certainly unhealthy for a lot of other people too. Right. And I believe that, again, a lot of our problems can be solved if we look for the source and again ask ourselves the question, why? And don't just shout about what it is, right? Yeah. Why is it the way that it is? Why are women not getting paid as much? Why is that? Because you're never going to solve the problem just by jamming something down someone's throat. But if we understand why that took place to begin with, then maybe we can actually come up with a solution. So I want to say that, but in really, honestly, more than that, I guess I'd say read any book that matters to you. To your personal truths. To your personal truths. I don't care what it is, but reading is good.
and it's healthy.
Oh, it's yeah.
Actually, fuck it. I change that. I change that.
Which book?
Read something that you think you won't agree with.
Yes. Okay. That's just what I was about to get. It's like read something that challenges you.
Yes.
You know, fundamentally. In my case, that's Derrida. You know,
right.
That's like my antithesis of an author. I have to read him because how else can I be critical of him if I don't know what he's saying?
Right.
You know.
You know what I really knew when I really was like comically sure that I was an atheist?
What?
Was when I read the Bible.
Yeah, the Old Testament, like alone, it's like
there were parts where I literally laughed out loud about like goring oxes, or because he used to stone the ox because it gores your neighbor.
Yeah, and my new thing with religion though, right, is Jordan Peterson is a hard case to crack because he was Christian, then he was atheist, then he was Christian, atheist, and like he has such a deep understanding of the values from the Bible as stories, right? The archetypes are like really powerful, and he's great at teaching that. But if you were to ask Jordan Peterson, do you believe in God? He would really hate that question. Basically, right?
Right.
So he's like...
Does it matter?
He transcends... Yeah, exactly. He transcends borders.
Well, that's the point. It doesn't matter to me what you read as long as you're challenging yourself to grow.
Yes.
As an
and
individual.
really
challenging your ideas.
with views. So I would say if you were under the liberal democratic persuasion, I would highly recommend reading some Milton Friedman.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the Republican, reading more... I don't know. I mean, I guess Sam Harris is a liberal. Yeah, so you can read Sam Harris, but he doesn't really talk about politics as much.
Right.
I don't know. I don't read personally a lot of political books. I'm more scientific.
Yeah.
If I could recommend any book, it would be Behave by Robert Sapolsky, which gives the entire evolutionary and biological history of what makes us do what we do. It's like this 800-page epic.
That's awesome.
And it talks about like the second before you make a decision, a minute, hour, day,
that is awesome.
Months, years, centuries. And then he talks about war and peace, and he talks about how someone becomes more conservative if they smell something bad. Someone becomes more liberal if they're hugged and feel safe. It's really interesting. Like it sounds like bullshit, but it's all scientific. He's a neurobiologist from Stanford, best in his field. And it really makes you stop and think about literally everything. It's like, why do we what we do? So you will love that.
Thank you for the recommendation.
It's like I read that in September, and it was like, it took a while to read. It's dense, and he does provide in his glossary some neuroscience background to get up to speed in biology. But really good book.
Very cool.
Holy shit. Like, I was so blown away by it that I referenced it in my GRE writing, and then that got me a top score because
nice.
I want to like write Robert
it's just in every
letter. You got me a good score on the
right.
Yeah, so anyways, those are great books. Yeah, it's a great book. Anyways, if you could say anything to the world with this platform of the round table, what would it be and why? If only one thing though. That's the thing. Only one.
What do you count as one thing?
Like one idea.
One idea?
Yes.
Fuck you.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Nice.
I'm kidding, everyone.
Oh, not very nice.
Oh, I would say, please.
Why are you listening to a podcast right now? Go do
I would say,
real life. No.
I would say, please, talk to your neighbor.
Yes.
Talk to your neighbor. Talk to someone who disagrees with you.
Yes.
Get to know them as a human being and not as some kind of digital entity that you despise. I fight with people all the time on Facebook.
Yeah, just get off Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I do it, and I realize when I'm doing it, I'm like, God, dude,
it's just pointless.
Yeah, because you meet people in real life. I met a guy down in Arizona.
Yeah.
I was actually on a trip for In the Telling, and I was down at the bar, and there was a convention going on or something. Just popped a seat next to me, and we started chit chatting. He was a Hispanic. His parents were born in Mexico. Hispanic Trump supporter.
Yeah,
right.
I met those before. Yeah.
And that was interesting to me, like right away.
Uh-huh.
In that he also he was in support of the wall and everything. It's like, your parents came here, right? But he just had a different set of values.
Yeah.
And authentically talking to that person for 2-3 hours or something, it changed my life, honestly, quite frankly, because I was so angry about everything that had happened with the election. I was so angry that we had this fucking orangutan. But then like you were talking about earlier, when you sit down and you talk to someone face to face, we're not that different.
We're not that different. We're all human. Yeah.
We laugh at the same things. We cry about the same things. We care about the same things. The ways in which the things that you care about are manifested in yourself are varied. And that's like our only points of real disagreement. But the goals, I think, they're all the same. I mean, I can't say that again. I say that for us fucking peons. you know, right? For these people who make more money than I'll ever even begin to fathom in my life. No, I don't actually think that we're probably very much alike. But for the rest of us, the 99%, I really don't think that we have.
Although that's something I want to deconstruct right now for the audience too, because I was a Bernie Sanders supporter once, but the 1%, the most incredible statistic I've ever learned in my life, if you make more than $34,000 a year in America, you are in the 1% of the world. You are wealthier than 99% of the world. And it's a very hard thing to wrap your head around. And that's adjusting for purchasing power parity. I know some people bring that up.
Sure.
But the point is, right, us Americans, assuming people who are listening are living in America, we really take basic things for granted. So like running water, electricity,
sure. Exactly.
shelter,
Think about that every
food.
day.
I mean, the food that we eat, honestly, especially in America. You know, the probably the biggest problem in the world that pisses me off is world hunger, simply because it's like we're not in any shortage of food.
Right.
For the first time in human history, more people are dying from obesity than malnutrition.
Holy shit.
If that doesn't terrify you, or just make you embarrassed, you know?
It certainly does, yeah.
So, and that's not to say that, because more people die from obesity, then malnutrition's not as big of a deal. No, it's still a big deal. It's just not as bad as it used to be. We are making progress. That's the thesis of Steven Pinker's Enlightenment Now book, is that it's never been better to be alive. What Jordan Peterson said so eloquently is that in the 1890s, vast majority of people were living on $1 a day by today's standards.
Right.
Which the World Bank defines as extreme poverty.
Right.
So it's like...
So you're saying it's a bit of a misnomer that we think of the 99% as the 99%?
A little bit. It's just like...
What I mean to say is, like, do you have a normal
huge
salary job?
Yeah.
And are you a working class citizen?
Right.
Or do you make your money off of investments?
Yes. There is, no, don't get me wrong, right? There's the 99% of the world, 1%. Then within the one, like, the graph is like, you need like a chart the size like of the atmosphere to show like, the inequality for the graph. Just saying. Right. Don't get me wrong. But I always like playing devil's advocate and finding exceptions. It's hard with the like top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1%. There is one man I really admire. He was Irish. He became a billionaire. He quickly was not a billionaire. He gave all his money away until he's at zero. You know, and he literally just declares doing that. Warren Buffett is going to give 99% of his wealth. Easy to do that when you're dead. Don't get me wrong. But it's still $80 billion.
Right.
And when I hear that happening, right, people might be like, well, how come he made $85 billion in the first place? It's like, yes.
Right.
But then again, depending on whose hand that money falls, it looks like it's going to be Bill Gates Foundation. But $80 billion, we could take care of a lot of the world's issues with $80 billion if it was carefully distributed. Big asterisks, right? But my point is, there's like loopholes in the system, you know, like I studied finance and economics, so I know like how to invest, and I plan to do that, but then give it to people who need it. But my point is like, there's loopholes in that system, and what I'm realizing about when I'm really analyzing myself and the world and what people struggle with, it's usually money, right? Just getting ends meet, and that's really sad and really hard. But the more I think about it, if you really study super wealthy people who made their wealth versus inherited it, right? Plenty inherited it, but some created it, you know, and then just exploded. But my point is, a lot of them, the way that, like Elon Musk is my favorite example, the way he perceives time and manages his time and how he works is so different from the rest of humanity. Just Elon Musk alone. Like, he puts efficiency to just another dimension, how he handles that, right? Maybe will die young because of how much he works, and there's plenty of people who are poor who work just as hard as Elon Musk. But my point is, like, that can be taught, how to manage your day like that. I hate when someone complains to me and says, I don't have enough time to do this thing that I want to do, or to meditate, or to run, or to blah blah. It's like, wake up at 3 a.m. Go to bed at 8, wake up at 3, you'll still get 7 hours. Then you'll see how much time you really have. You'll be so bored by 7 a.m. you know, before the world's even woken up yet. And so, okay, free time. Money, more complicated. But that's the new thing I'm trying to do, is things like, okay, what is like the simplest solution to the world's problems? And the first step is just educating myself, reading and doing the research and understanding it. And translates eventually into me perhaps doing a PhD in neuroscience, and that will really understand the brain. But a lot of people's obstacles are themselves, like the way they just think about things, right? This fixed mentality. I think someone did a good TED Talk, fixed versus growth mentality, where fixed is just saying, well, my life is awful and that's just the way it is. Right? There's so much strength to having a growth mentality, saying my life sucks right now, but I can do better.
Mm-hmm.
I can change that.
Mm-hmm.
I can, slowly.
Yeah.
I can crawl out of this pit, out of this abyss. Like, to have that empowerment and that motivation is like the greatest gift you can give somebody. And the mind is just so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's my rant.
Kind
of stuff, but people really hold themselves back.
Yeah.
And I know there's gonna be people upset by that and be like, "Well, yeah, it's easy for you to say when you have a nice college education and you grew up in a middle class family and and you're a white male cisgender heterosexual." I know.
Yeah.
but still, it's like, but I'm like, no, but still, structured time, get sleep, exercise, meditation, diet. No, you can. Everyone can improve.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can improve. So anyways, good message. Hijack that. Okay, next question. Who would you most love to have a coffee conversation with?
Yes.
Alive or dead?
And I'll only alter the question to say a Scotch conversation with.
Yes.
Because both myself
Fair enough.
and the guest that I would love to speak with would enjoy the Scotch more than they would coffee. And that's Christopher Hitchens.
Okay.
He died before his time.
Yes.
Laryngeal cancer. And for those who don't know who Christopher Hitchens is, he was a public speaker, orator, as a lot of people called him. He was a writer, wrote for Slate.
Great writer.
And he was an extraordinary writer and journalist. And he was actually the guy I didn't mention. Sort of another critical part about my life's journey was that he was the one who helped me turn the corner, into going into journalism for my profession, and of course B, sort of reinforcing passionately why religion is kind of a evil force in a lot of ways in the world, and there needs to be a conversation about it.
Yes.
I don't care if you change your mind, but you need to have a conversation.
We need to talk about it, yeah.
But I would love to sit down with the Hitch, because I think he was one of the most brilliant, well-spoken individuals that I'd ever known. He was certainly one of the most well-read. He had an apartment. It honestly couldn't have been much bigger than this, wall to wall, with books.
Just books.
And not just
he's
science.
Incredibly intelligent. Oh yeah,
with
all
literature
subjects.
and
very well read. Well, it's funny you say that. I was researching him recently because I was thinking of Malala. She's doing a PhD in Oxford. He did the same degree. This degree that many prime ministers have done. And it makes complete sense that he's well read, because what's the PPE? It's philosophy, political science, economics.
Right.
In depth. It's like a triple major. It's probably the hardest thing you can do undergrad at Oxford. And I wish I could have done that, because I know some things about philosophy, although not at a deep level. I do know economics deeply. I don't know political science that deeply, so not an academic environment. And so to learn all three of those, and to learn all three of those with other Oxford students and then Oxford professors, like, yeah, it's ivory tower and elite for sure. But, oh my God, like, that was his foundation.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering, like, where, to the listeners, like, how did Christopher Hitchens, like, how did he think the way he thinks? How
become
that thinker? Well, he had
that
a
agent in the world.
stellar education.
Yeah, and to answer the question of why, I suppose I would love people to know a couple of things about Christopher Hitchens. He was the type of person who championed all of these things that I'm talking about with critical thinking, skepticism, all this stuff. And I'll tell you what he did. He went so far in, he didn't know, as many of us don't, right? There's, again, people are bitching about one thing or another, liberal and conservative, right now, throwing shit at each other. This was back in the times where waterboarding was an issue, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's saying, oh, it's torture. Oh, it's not torture. It's just, they're not really drowning, right? And there's this whole argument between them, right? So he says, as I think this is what the most respectable journalist could do. He said, fuck it, I'm going to find out. And he got fucking waterboarded.
No way. No way. Just to see what it felt
like.
Yeah,
because he's not going to sit here and write a piece about it for Slate. He's not going to write some opinion piece saying that it's torture without really knowing. So he has the fucking courage and dignity to go and say, and honesty.
That's so heroic.
And journalistic integrity.
Seriously.
And he got waterboarded, and he said, it's definitely fucking torture.
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty well known that it was torture.
Yeah.
But it sounds a horrifying way to experience. I mean,
yeah,
the fact that he did that, I really love that. Someone who's not as great as a journalist, but did something similar, you know. And okay, this is gonna give me hate from the right, but Anderson Cooper with schizophrenics, he was able to simulate. They were able to simulate for him what it's like to be schizophrenic to a rudimentary degree.
Yeah, sure.
But it's this idea that all he had to do was very, very simple tasks, like make a like a paper boat with their instructions, color. He couldn't do anything because he's listening to the microphone of this person shouting, just saying random things, and just and just arguing and yelling and like literally simulating voices.
Right.
And he's just like, I can't do this. Like, it really shook him up. He was really doing it.
Right.
You know? And he just did it for a day. What a beautiful way to show what schizophrenics are going. Some paranoid schizophrenics are going through every day of their existence.
Yeah.
What better way can you show that than to experience that, at least however we can with technology? I was really like blown away by that. So now hearing that Christopher Hitchens did that with Waters was even way more intense. Like that's like a testament to like his character.
It is.
It's brilliant.
It is
just brilliant.
Yeah, and you know,
not many would do that.
He walked the walk. He didn't just talk the talk. And so often today, all I see is people again
talking
on their I'll call it moral zealotry and their ethical high horse. Yeah, and they're just talking the talk. So. Yeah, I wish he were still around. One of my great idols, because I would love to grab a scotch with him. And I guess since he's dead, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
He'll do.
He seems chiller, actually.
Is this going?
Yep. The time code still.
Okay, good. Okay.
Rolling on.
I can always cut that. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I got that recorded. That was great. Okay.
So
Neil deGrasse Tyson, I love to. If I could pick anyone, it'd be Nikola Tesla. He's my man. You know, he's the genius. He was so bizarre. I know a lot about him, but like to actually converse with him would be
like engage with that brain.
Yes, he was best friends with Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Right? You know, he did experiments on Mark Twain, which is awesome.
Nice.
You know, he was so peculiar, but it's like he predicted the smartphone in the 1800s. I mean, it was really just bizarre, the idea of the smartphone. He was such a. He would like work for 75 hours straight. He was so eccentric too. He had a love affair with a pigeon, one specific pigeon, not any human women. So bizarre, you know.
Totally.
There needs to be a movie about it. Like there really does.
I thought there was.
Know. There was The Prestige. He was in, played by David Bowie. Right. But just a whole movie about it.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Anyways, so great. Yeah, Christopher Hitchens, I love. Oh. There's a video of him, Christopher Hitchens, and Stephen Fry debating the Catholic Church.
Saw it.
It's brilliant, right?
It's brilliant.
And, yeah, it was brilliant. And I was almost at tears by what Stephen Fry said because it was like the speech of his life. I thought that he gave.
I thought so too.
He actually stole undeniable. The show. Undeniable. Yeah. So, anyways.
Yeah.
Reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you now? And that's a BMW. That's my dad's BMW. Just for the audience. Yes, we're that rich. Okay. Where are you now, and where would you like to be in 10 years?
Oh God. Right.
And tell the audience how old you are too.
I will as soon as the garage doors.
This commercial break is exactly. BMW and my dad.
What would I sponsor?
That we're doing a podcast.
I prefer as my commercial?
Oh God, the full complete DVD set of Christopher Hitchens.
Like it's a fucking full 10. Dude, he has so much content though. Literally, that's like what I would podcast. Back in the day was just Hitchens debates.
One time, I got so much hate by women though. One time he said like,
women aren't funny.
Yes.
Because he had a biological argument.
Yeah. You know
that there never developed an evolutionary necessity for women to he's obviously not saying women are incapable of being funny. No, he was making a generalization.
Yes. And so all I would say on that's like, I know, walking on fire. But as a whole, in general, women are attracted to guys that are funny. It's an asset. We can at least say that a guy's funny. But I would go so far as it's the supreme asset. Okay, there's a reason we don't see Brad Pitt doing stand-up comedy, right? Or Hugh Jackman. It's these ugly dudes, often, not always, but typically, like, ugly guys. Why? Because that's what they need to get laid and reproduce, is to be funny. It sucks. I don't know why this is. There's obviously societal, patriarchal, biological reasons for this, but not the same with women. I've never heard a guy be like, yeah, she's not like that cute. And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's kind of mean, but she's so funny. And like, I love women who have a great sense of humor, right? I love this line. I'm gonna get killed for this. It's public, but I'm gonna say it anyways. There's this
Well, it's
line
only
that I
public
love.
if you want to make it public.
Oh, I'm making it public. They're not gonna get this far. They're not listening right now. They were blown off when you said something about God. I don't know, but the bottom line is, girls like guys who make them laugh. Guys like girls that laugh at their jokes.
Yeah.
And like, yes, that's a generalization, but like, fuck me. I feel like, I'm sorry, I could do such a comprehensive cross-cultural study on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are plenty of really funny women, especially my number one right now is Kate McKinnon on SNL.
Mm-hmm.
She's fucking hilarious, right? So the idea isn't that women can't be funny or not funny. It's just that more guys go into the field of comedy than women, I think, because either of desperation or I don't know. It usually comes from a lot of darkness. It's not. There's a lot of depression with comedians.
Yeah, direct correlation.
Yeah, direct correlation. So maybe it's a good thing if there's not an equal amount of women.
Right.
Maybe women are happier than men. I don't know. But in any case, that digression aside,
Yeah.
where are you now? Where do you want to be in 10 years?
Right.
Right back at you.
Well, it's an interesting question. As I told you before, I didn't know that I would really make it this far.
Yes, tell that story.
So, I don't know why, but I've always had sort of the sensation that I couldn't see myself living into adulthood. And I mean, maybe it's just like this torrent of anxiety and stress, and I just thought I would have either gotten myself into enough trouble or I would have gotten ill.
How do you think you would have died?
Well,
What did you envision something, or is it just a vague?
I mean, I guess either suicide or illness.
Yeah.
Because, for a while, I just didn't care.
Yeah.
Didn't care to live.
Were you nihilistic?
What's that?
Were you nihilistic?
Yeah, I still am, definitely.
There's
no question.
I have a fun take on that. But
No question.
Yeah.
I mean, but now it's like I want to be here.
Yes.
I definitely want to
Good.
be here.
I'm happy you're here.
And I want to do what I can to make other people enjoy this place too.
Yeah.
While I'm here. So
Yeah.
now, I'm director of photography for this company. It's an education company. I like some of the work that we do, but I want to do my own work, obviously. It's where the creative heart and soul comes from. So, if I were to envision in 10 years, I would want to be making either documentary films or a documentary series, some kind.
Absolutely.
Doing a lot more comedy, to be quite frank, because I think comedy is really what we need. And it actually is, if we have anything that is the podium for discourse, where people of differing mind views actually get along, it's comedy because it's disarming. It tears down those, really honestly flippant, frivolous walls of our own arrogance of our opinions.
I think all comedians, not all, but most comedians are very intelligent and also are philosophers, right? So George
absolutely.
Carlin, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle.
Yeah,
Brilliant,
seriously.
I include Louis C.K. I know he's
his whole
done.
thing.
His
but
career's
his
over.
when he was doing
And
comedy,
he had a problem with masturbation, and that's
is
the price he pays. But I studied his comedy, and I thought he was very philosophical. I thought his show Louis was brilliant.
Me too. Bill Hicks. You ever seen?
Bill Hicks too.
Mark Maron.
Yes,
I love Mark Maron. His show also deeply philosophical for people that are depressed. Anybody might be listening.
Yeah.
Check out his work and check out his show.
Yeah,
stuff helps
He's pretty
people.
dark and he's great.
Yeah.
Very honest. Very honest.
Yeah,
about
brutally honest. But that's good. That's what we need,
That's
right?
what we need, yeah.
So yeah,
You find truth in comedy. Yeah.
Exactly. So in 10 years, I would say I want to have people have more honest experiences with themselves and with others. And I want to show that through my work in whatever form that work takes. Right now, that work is filmmaking because I believe it is, by a substantial margin, the most powerful form of storytelling that exists.
Oh, yeah, and to empathize.
Yeah.
To allow people to empathize. I'm so glad you're saying that because, there's many things I want to do in the future, but one project that I'm really keen on, right, is partly with this podcast, interviewing people around the world, which means traveling around the world.
Right.
But the other that I want to write a book, and I'm writing a book currently, but there's another book I want to write, and it's called What the Poor Can Teach Us About Living the Rich Life. And I'm only a rich life, obviously not talking about money, but I'm talking about the fact that, okay, Philippines, right? Lots of poverty, lots of suffering in their history. Very positive, smiling people. okay, they're still suffering, but they're positive, right? I have 2 friends now in the Philippines who've given me a great insider look into their culture. Then I watched Anthony Bourdain's show when he's in the Philippines and tried their food and just showcase their culture. And I'm like, man, I really want to visit the Philippines because, like, that's what I want to show people in America. It's like, okay, if these people are literally, like, scavenging for metal to build a home and they're smiling and you're not, I know, clinical depression, complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
But my point is, like, if they can do it, I think a lot of people can do it. And, you know, so mine would be more through writing, right? But I love that you want to do with the documentary, you know, and that kind of thing. I just think also, if I was to give any advice to anyone listening, like, please travel.
Yeah, it
get out of
broadens
America.
your horizons.
Like, go anywhere, but
I agree.
Better yet, go third world country, but just experience someone who sees life differently than you do.
Culture outside of your own.
The biggest thing I'm grateful for is the fact that I'm half French and that throughout my childhood I was visiting France because it showed me that there's another way to live life. In America, it's work. Nothing wrong with that. I respect people with hard work ethic. It's important. But it's like work as hard as you can. Be successful. We like jack off to success. We worship success. And then you'll be happy. You know?
Yeah, it kind of gets voided.
In Barcelona, they start with happiness, right? Fiesta, siesta, amazing food, tapas, and then they say, "Why be successful?" You know, and there's a middle ground to be reached, but just the idea of breaking out of this American mold, you know, if for no other reason to then say America's fucking fantastic if you've been to other cultures and you prefer what we do.
Still like,
but at least you have evidence and you have perspective and maybe even newfound gratitude for the privileges and the amazing things you could do in America that you can't do in other places. I'm very critical of this country, but I'm also cognizant of that there's things you can do here you can't do anywhere else. And you should be blessed for that. So Elon Musk, perfect example. In South Africa, he could not be Elon Musk. In Europe, he could not be Elon Musk. Only in America, he could start his own fucking space company. Right. And electric car company. And Solar City and everything. Like, he shows the epitome of what can be done in this country. Although there's like an asterisk, right? Not everyone can have the American dream. But to travel and to converse with people from other countries. My favorite people in the world are Australians. They're so positive. They're always giving me insight. Real quick, Me Too movement. I talk to Australians. I'm like, what are your thoughts outside perspective on the American Me Too movement? They're like, well, it changed Australia. There are now more female singers on the radio. And the entire music industry in Australia is transformed because of the Me Too movement in America. And I hope Americans really listen intently to that because I don't think we realize how much of an influence our country has on the rest of the world. We have a tremendous influence on the rest of the world.
Big, very big.
Whenever we mess up...
The biggest influence.
It's tremendous. We have the biggest...
Tremendous.
We got the biggest influence. But, no, seriously, we do. Other countries... This is what other countries tell me. I wouldn't know otherwise. But my point is, it's like, talk to other people from other countries because you'll learn so much, you know.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. On that subject... Second to last question. If you could visit any city right now, what would it be? You could go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, went to China. I only got to go to mainly Beijing and the surrounding cities.
And how was that?
It was extraordinary.
Yes.
And life-altering, as you were just mentioning.
Sure.
I loved it. I had a love-hate relationship with it for a while, but it really inspired me to go to the rural areas of China and meet more of those people. So a big part of me wants to go to a city in rural China, of nowhere in specific.
Yeah, but somewhere new.
But yeah, also though, there are so many places in the world to travel, and I definitely want to hit all of the continents. And Africa's, I've had a calling to go there for a while. I was gonna do a film actually for a guy who wanted to teach people about the insects of Cameroon, and it was like people didn't really like them or respect them. There was a philosophy professor I had at CU, actually. He was a really extraordinary guy. And he wanted me to go and do a film in tandem with a book to help educate people and stuff like that. Right. And to not be afraid of stuff they didn't have to be afraid of and all that kind of thing. And it almost worked out, but the timing just wasn't right. But ever since then, I've had a deep itch to, go to a place where, I don't know, I mean, it screams origins to me. And not because that's where literally all humans evolved from, but also I've only ever lived with African American culture. and I've never known African culture. And it's just important that I think I get in touch with that if I want to be a more full human being.
Oh yeah, no, it'll totally change your life.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say my connection to African culture is one, my next door neighbor who lives in the house behind you. He's from Nigeria. Coolest guy ever. He was a professional soccer player and then he's an astrophysicist, PhD at CU. Like, insanely awesome dude. Two of my cousins are from Ethiopia. So my dad's brother was an anthropologist in Ethiopia. He teaches at Smith, and he adopted two Ethiopian children. One, I think, went back to Ethiopia. The other's in Washington, I believe, doing a master's. But they're awesome. Mulu Masai, I love them. And recently they reconnected with their old family, and that was cool. But I've never been to Africa because I can't have vaccinations. That's something I'll have to get over, after my severe allergic 1 in a million reaction.
Right.
But I probably can have some more in the future, but that's the main reason I haven't been to Africa. That being said, I feel a calling to it as well.
Yeah.
Partly because, I studied development economics,
right.
My thesis on that. And the other reason is there's this brilliant teacher I have who worked at the World Bank for a while. He's the vice president of the African Development Bank. And he's going to write me a letter of rec, and he said he wants me to go to LSE, which is like great. It's like the #1 school. If you can get me in, that's great. Not going to be picky. But he said after you finish the master's in econ there, I think you'll like our work. That's the way he put it. Like kind of an invitation. And he's
that's
something
great.
else. He's got so many masters and PhDs and he's from Egypt.
Cool.
Awesome dude. Anyways. So Africa.
Yeah.
Any country though.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. Yeah, I want to go to the city of Africa. Yes. No, but I would actually want to go to Ethiopia for a couple of reasons. I found out recently that it was the only country in Africa that during the time of imperialism and beyond was the only one to maintain its independence.
Yeah.
Which is just, that's a story in itself.
Incredible. I mean, 1 out of 55.
Yeah.
Right?
Extraordinary. So, and then I think I could get in touch with just a very interesting, storied history culture. I'm not that every country in Africa wouldn't have that beholden, but and also we always think of Ethiopia as this, horrifically impoverished place. It was all of the interpretations that I had of China, and it's in fact what I made the documentary end up being about when I was there, was our perceptions are merely that. We are mediated beings, right?
Yes.
So our ideas of what a place actually is, you can never know until you get there. And even when you get there, you're still a mediated person. You've grown up in Western culture. You have your own filters, right? But you try to get as close as you can get to, again, the capital T truth. What is this place? In order to do that, you have to talk to people.
Yes.
So, I just want to get in touch, I guess, with people.
Right. Here's what's so critical. A lot of people can't just go to Africa, but they could watch your documentary.
Well, that's exactly why I want to do the work that I want to do. So they live it vicariously.
Yes.
Right?
It's so important to show, I think, the leaders of Africa, the future leaders, right? So, when I was at GW, the privilege I got there was we would get these international speakers from Africa and Asia and all this stuff. It's just incredible. And this man, he was a refugee, and he marched 1,000 miles by barefoot, right? And then he got to America. He went to Yale, got a PhD, came back, is building schools in Sudan. And I talked to this man, and it's if you want to talk about inspiring, or hardship, or anyone who should have a victim mentality, but him, and he doesn't. And he's so strong. And one woman in the audience asked, what about the Africans who leave Africa and come to America and have trouble adjusting to our culture? Which is a fair question, And he's like, that's not that hard. And he's like, okay, if you're used to walking barefoot in the desert,
right,
being killed, threatened to be killed by tribes and raped and horrible, beyond any suffering that anyone should ever do, he endured it. Being an outsider in America, it just isn't that bad compared to that, right? Everything relative. I'm not saying it's not hard. Being an immigrant in this country is very difficult, but given his experience, right, if you can make it to America, you've made it, for all suits and purposes, if you have water and shelter and food, So I just love those stories, and so we need more of his stories out there, I think, to the general public, not just to like GW. That's a very exclusive and expensive school.
Right.
So I love, that's what you want to do. Last question.
Yes.
Here we go. What are the most memorable words of advice you have ever received in your life, Trent?
Oh, God. It would probably be,
If you can pick one.
oh, son, you got to take advantage of your abnormally sized penis. And you really need to get into the porn industry. And I've never looked back. You know, I've been doing it for 20 years now. Maybe closer to 30, I guess. And
I thought I saw a guy that looked like you.
you know? No,
Wow.
it's...
Wow.
yeah, so no,
You went there.
it was from my mother, though. And I've actually heard this, you know, expressed in other words from other people. But it's the best reminder for me to have the freedom to be myself, have the courage to be myself, who I am. Because again, you can't even if maybe you don't necessarily like the person that you are, you first have to accept the person that you are in order to improve yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're gonna fucking hate yourself. You don't want to improve yourself.
It's never gonna happen.
Right? So best advice she ever gave me really was, yeah, we got like
5%. Keep going.
So
you got this.
Kind of along the lines of the Stoic conversation, right? People around you, they can act however they want to act, and they can say mean shit, and they can be really cruel. People can do whatever they want to do. But that doesn't mean that you have to change how you act towards others, right? So my mother taught me that like kindness is like the most important virtue.
It is, yeah.
And people around you can be total fuckheads and they can be total shitheads all the time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you have to be back. Don't change yourself just because they're giving you a certain stimuli, right?
Yeah.
Be kind. Just unyieldingly kind. And, you know, it'll come back to you in some way, shape, or form. So, and, you know, again, it's to remind yourself of that. Like, you respond and react really viscerally to people sometimes. And when people are cruel to you, you want to respond with cruelty or anger or anything, right? But it doesn't have to change who you are. And I believe that. I believe that fundamentally. That's the core person I am.
Well, thank you, Trent. That's a beautiful note to
Thank
end
you.
on.
Thank
This
you
was
so
an
much.
Excellent first episode.
I really appreciate
it. Thank you. That's it, folks. Go outside or something.